Welcome to our new series of lessons. Here we're going to look at cells. This lesson particularly is going to be introductory, so there are some basic things I would like you to know before we proceed into the others. Okay, so at the end of this lesson, the student would be able to describe the relationship between cell and living things, and would also be able to distinguish between a unicellular organism and a multicellular organism. And as well, the student would be able to state the cell theory. It is very important for you to know life processes and why we connect life processes to living things. There is a video on that, so if you haven't watched it, please do so before you partake in this lesson, or probably you have done it in class and so you are also good to go here. Now, what is a cell? Well, we are saying that every living thing is made up of very tiny structures that we call cells. So whether plants, animals, fungi, protozoa, bacteria, we are all made up of these very tiny structures that are called cells. And cells are important for life because they are capable of carrying out the life processes. Remember that in our lesson on living things versus non-living things, we talked about how life processes are used to characterize some things as living. And here we are saying that it is a cell that carries out the life processes. So what does it mean? There is actually a connection. It means that cells make things living. And that is why the definition says that cell is the basic unit of living things. Or in other words, cell is the basic unit of life. Yes, I know that maybe you have heard about cells before, but you probably haven't seen how cells actually look because they are very tiny, so you cannot see them with your unaided eyes. So let us look at this. Under the microscope, this is how the epidermis of onion looks like. So this is what we call cell. This one, that is another cell. This is another cell. That is another cell. Right. The dark thing you see in here, that dark spot you see in here, is the nucleus. So plural sense would say that nucleus. So this, that, this, that, they are the nuclei. So many cells in here. Yes, so this just to help you to appreciate how cells look under the microscope, under a compound light microscope. Yes. Now let us look at another example. We have looked at an illustration from a plant source, onion. Now let us look at an illustration from animal cells. This is a finger that has been pricked and you see blood there. And when you magnify this under the microscope, you are going to see something like this. So these are red blood cells. Right. So cells exist in different shapes, sizes, looks. Yes. But just for illustration, let us manage these two. Okay. Now let us try to also understand the relationship between cells and organisms. How many cells are required to describe something as an organism? Well, an organism could be just one cell, provided that one cell is able to undergo all the life processes and live independently. Independently in the sense of carrying out the life processes. So in that sense, we call them the unicellular organisms. But there are some organisms too that would carry out life processes but would require so many cells to work together to carry out that particular life process. So for example, movement as a life process in humans is carried out by so many cells together. And so in our case, we are referred to as multicellular organisms. Right. This is an example of unicellular organism. It is paramecium. This paramecium is able to carry out all the life processes by itself. So whether nutrition, respiration, excretion, movement, irritability, reproduction, growth, it carries out all these life processes by itself. So yeah, unicellular organism. We have looked at a multicellular organism already by the example of the onion. Okay. Now finally, let us look at cell theory. Since I said this is just the introduction, so there are some basic things that you need to know about cells. One of them is the cell theory. And for cell theory, we mean that the knowledge about cells, or the information we have about cells that has been found to be true from time to time. So what is this? The first point for you to note is that all living things are made up of cells. This is the first point of the cell theory. All living things are made up of cells. And cells are the basic unit of life. So it means without cells, something cannot be described as living. Without cells, something cannot have life. That is the point. And finally, new cells are formed from pre-existing cells. So this point is telling us that there is nothing like a new cell that has been created. Every new cell came from a cell that was already existing. So just like your body, the first time you were formed from one cell from your father, one cell from your mother. And while you were growing, it's a sign that your body's number of cells were increasing. And they were increasing because the cells that were existing in your body were dividing and enlarging. Right? So there is nothing like a new cell has been created. These are true about cells. So that is what we have for our lesson today. Yes, we have looked at the definition of cell and the relationship between cells and living things. We have talked about that, and we also proceeded to talk about unicellular and multicellular organisms. And finally, we have talked about cell theory. So basically, these are things you need to know for the start as we delve deeper into the concept of cells. Okay, next we are going to look at types of cells. Right, but don't forget to answer these questions, and you can send your answers in the comment section or to the contact that I'll provide on this video. Okay, so let's meet in our next lesson. See you.